everybody. Oh my goodness, the world of technology and in person is always fun. Yeah. We came together today then for our panel because we have local teams. Dan goes a little bit above and beyond for doing we're more grassroots, and he kind of trains us grassroots. So if we kind of intermingle, there's definitely going to be lots of space for any questions or like conversation. We're going to have a specific breakout at the very end to kind of have a little bit more private conversations, or if you guys have any questions that come up along the way about, and honestly anything that we've got here to show you how we ended up coming together for our separate teams. And the little pieces that we made for today are kind of so we know who's around, because otherwise it's hard to tell who we are. Oh, I can grab you a cup in a minute, and then we can stick them on there. See, I love that, because we're all here, you know. But like, who do you bring with you to the table? Who's come together, and how many things have you been part of so far? So, kind of with that as our kickoff. Should we go through and just kind of we'll do a quick intro of who's at the table here, and then Dan is going to head us into the next part. So my name is Siravo, and I'm the president for Madtown Mommas and Disability Advocates.
Martha, I need you to speak up loud, and I need you to take your mask off while you're reading.
I did not know the entire front of the room, but thank you. Do you need me to do it again? No? Okay. Okay.
Hey everyone, Dan Grandone. I coordinate the WILD project. That's for the Wisconsin Leadership Award.
I'm Mattie, Reese. I'm the treasurer of the Madtown.
I am Margarita, Rubio. I am the vice president of Mattown Mommas. And I'm Hauser, and I am the secretary.
On to you, Dan.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all doing? Just a quick name, since we have a smaller, intimate group. In the back.
Prashana Robinson.
Good to meet you. In the way back.
Aaron Lombardo.
Del Underback.
Jim Gates.
Dee?
Yes.
Good to meet you, Dee.
No, Jody Van.
All right. Well, in this session on building teams, anyone ever felt like this before in trying to build a local team, an advocacy team?
We missed one person.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nikki Vandermeulen.
Sorry, Nikki. I thought you were part of the panel here. It's good to have you, Nikki.
But I'm semi-panel, semi-board member.
Right.
Okay. You got the three pictures there, the three roles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think real quick. So the WILD project the last 5 years has really been an effort here in the state of Wisconsin to build local organizing and advocacy capacity. And really learning from the hard lesson of way back when, maybe anyone out protesting back in 2011 during Act 10 and 100,000 people were at the Capitol. Anyone there? Yeah. And we could actually mobilize 100,000 people over the course of a week and still lose, right? So what does it look like for all of us? I don't know if Karan's his keynote before lunch today resonated, but how do we actually move from a place where a majority of people, as far as public opinion supporting public education, and this gap between the actual policies that are moving, how do we close that, right? And at least my take is it takes organizing in building teams. So you go to the next slide. One way that we introduce organizing is it's one way of exercising leadership in the world. In this case here in the state. A word that's thrown around quite a bit. But just as a way to orient this session, I like to think of leadership as, first of all, it starts with each one of us, right? Making the decision to step off the sidelines, take responsibility for not going at it alone, right? In a lot of these fights, this came out of another round with the Joint Finance Committee. We, of course, need lots of people to build the kind of power that we need. So it's for enabling others to achieve some kind of a shared purpose in the face of uncertainty. Anyone ever lived through any uncertainty in your day-to-day in your lives? Yeah, it's something that we do every day, right? And I think that is part of what it takes to be an organizer and leader, right? Is when we don't have all the answers, And as much as we want to get, that we so often get caught in what we call the snare of preparation, you got to have the game plan A to Z before I step into action. We found that it actually takes getting into action to find a way forward. So, real quick on the next slide. Through WILD, we introduce 5 basic organizing practices. And we introduce them as a practice because, much like any craft, how do you learn it? How do you learn to play music? You got to do it, right? You got to go out and do it. And so the beauty of teams, which is one of the 5 practices that we teach, one is storytelling, one is relationship building, is the foundation for building a team. Thinking about teams, strategy, and action. These are all things that we experience and do in our daily lives. How many people in the room have ever been on a team? Could be a family, a sports team, a team at school. Yeah. So we all have this experience of being on teams. And real quick, we're just going to get a few people to share. Curious if you've been on a dream team before. What the team was and what was it about that team that made you want to come back? That made it
What do you mean with the dream team?
Yeah, I mean a team where maybe there was clarity of what you were doing. You went out and you were having fun doing. You achieved your purpose. Like it was something you wanted to come back for. And then of course, for any comic book fans, got the Justice League, and then we've got the League of Doom. So also teams that just make you want to scream, right?
Yes.
That you never want, you got a quick yes, you never want to come back to. So if you can just think of real quick, a dream team, what the team was and what made it effective maybe, and then a scream team. What was it in particular that made it effective? And love to hear from a few folks.
I have been in both.
You've been in both.
Yeah.
What was the dream team coming to mind?
The dream team is actually my job where I work. So I love my job and what we all achieve as a team.
And anything specific about that team that made it special for you?
We're all about food.
Okay. You like put food at the center of anything else?
Food from the farm to the table. It's like so we talk about it all the time. And no, I mean, and we talk about what we're gonna do, and if I can't do something, I have support right there, or ideas. Yeah. Scream team.
Sure.
When I first started on school board 7 years ago.
And what made it a scream team for you?
No leadership, no purpose, or no clear purpose,
Clear purpose?
and not common goals.
No common goals. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. We're here, maybe one more person, just because I know we're low on time. Anyone in the back? Dream team or scream team? Lived experience? We got a wealth of these to draw on. Yeah, go ahead.
I had the privilege at East High School working with a cross-categorical team of teachers and paraprofessionals where we had a cross-categorical case management list that we were able to connect with all families, and families were a part of our voice. And for about 10 years or so, we kind of lived in this little bubble of accountability that felt very empowering.
Where there was actual accountability.
Where we were told by families and by students that we were making a difference.
Right. Anyone ever feel uncomfortable when there's accountability in groups or teams you've been a part of? Why was it important that was an element of it?
Accountability is all that, it's the only adrenaline that you can actually use to make a difference.
Yeah, really
Being
important.
accountable.
Agreement. All right, I know there's probably a lot more out there, but I want to keep this thread going and pass it over to, who's next?
I think I'm next on there. If we can move the slide down one more.
Maybe next slide.
Next.
I don't know where the mic is. There's a couple of the leadership, like the forms of like the teams that people may have been part of, where that's what these slides were covering.
You want me to go through that with you?
If you want to do, they were just more for picture, no time?
We don't have.
Okay. They're just saying like the different types of teams in there, so this can be available afterward too, of like where the team is focused and who can be part of the team, where they navigate to after. Yep, that's after,
I think it's before you, actually.
oh, you think?
Can
no,
I use
that's
our
right here.
seat? Can everyone see? We can.
Can everybody see behind me? If they can, I can just move. I can sit on her lap if you need. This is a dream team right here.
No, but if you just move a little bit, you'll be.
Thank you. Can you see back there, Erin? Okay. It was Erin, correct?
So then we're on to what makes up a team, or we're gonna go back to mission. Okay. We're a group of individuals working together to achieve their goal. Whether you start off small, or you have a pretty decent group together that you kind of came across and decided to do more. Louder. Got it. I will, oh my goodness.
Speakers by me.
Oh, okay. Our theme today was with the Muppets, because Muppets are also like a big group of crazy characters that came together and somehow they work. They may sometimes cause their own problems, but they work it through together, and that's exactly what a team does. It's important that everybody's bringing something different to the table. There's a little bit of fun, a little bit of hardship, in there, but there's always like a leader in there too. So if you'll notice more in Muppets, we see like Kermit shows up, it's like, we can do this. So there's still a little bit of tier building that's in there. So we that's why you kind of went with our theme throughout the day, because everybody is built up of something different and everybody brings some meaning into the team. Oh, you're right, that was for him. That's okay. If she wants to bring us down, or do you wanna, what time are we at?
Wait, if Dan, if you want to go ahead and do some team build tools, but just gonna do a short version, that'd be great.
Sure. So, just real briefly, want to introduce this as how we think about structure, shared structure. So, not top down, where it's being put upon us, but to think about structure and leadership, a lot of different models for how you can do this, right? The first one is this approach called that I'm the leader. And I'm the dot in the center. I'm taking on all the roles and responsibility, and kind of dictating out to everyone else what the game plan is and what we're doing. Anyone ever been a part of this? Or it's just you alone feeling at the center of that? Real quick, what are the challenges with that dynamic? Nikki?
The challenges are if you make the wrong decision, everyone is on you. If you don't make the decision, everyone is also on you. And even if you made the right decision, there's always going to be someone who's going to send a nasty email, nasty comment of some sort that says you did something wrong. There is absolutely no way to please 100% of the people.
Right. So a lot of challenges, not only around decision making and being the dot in the center, but also as you think about all the other arrows, all the other people around the center, right? Who, in many cases, at least in my experience with this, often start feeling disengaged, like their time's not being used meaningfully. Is that something you want to be a part of? Usually not, right? And over time, what often happens to the dot and center, after only so much time, where, oops, I touched it. The person often ends up getting burnt out. And when that person leaves, then there's complete chaos in the center of what they try to create. Another approach is that we're all leaders, right? And I know somebody early on mentioned, was it your school board experience?
Mm-hmm.
Where there was no clear purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone ever been there where you feel like people are running in 10 different directions, all have a different sense of what we're actually trying to achieve? Yeah, and of course the challenges with that, in getting anything done. You go to the next slide. So, kind of getting down to the basics. This may seem pretty elementary, but can't say in my experience of training a lot of people over time, how many people, not like any other craft, miss getting the basics right.
Yes.
So when they all of a sudden come into these moments where they're trying to engage, I know I was in a breakout earlier, thousands of people, when there's like a hot moment on education, they don't have the structure to actually absorb and move large numbers of people into action in a meaningful way. So introducing what it looks like to actually build a team. And if you go to the next slide. building a team, we found oftentimes most effective teams are 4 to 8 people that have a clear sense of purpose, agreements and how they're gonna work together, a way they're gonna divide up roles and responsibilities. What often happens, curious if anyone has been here, often find that people create leadership islands. They actually take the first step of building a team, but then very quickly, not for bad intent, they all very quickly become insulated, and they forget to continue engaging all the other people around them in new ways. Anyone been there before?
Everyone's a lone wolf.
Yeah, very quickly become limited in what you're able to do. So, next slide. So introducing, maybe this is not an introduction, but what does it look like to create a snowflake? Like that's a word we have to take back these days. But yeah, what does it look like to create a structure that has real leadership and people taking on, Nikki, to your point around decision making at the center of it? But the difference between this approach and the down the center, we found, is that people at the heart of it take on the role of not commanding and controlling, but actually operating as organizers, where their main responsibility is to go out and recruit and invite other people in and support them on teams that over time, they can actually build the structure, particularly in volunteer-driven efforts, where they can engage in some cases hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the shared purpose. So, introducing the snowflake, and then maybe one more slide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to zip through this.
This is also in the handout.
Cool. So, just want to put these out there as a little bit of setting context, and then I'm going to kick it over to the rest of the panel. There's been a lot of research on teams. 2 particular researchers out of Harvard, Richard Hackman and Ruth Wagaman, who studied teams around the world, sports teams, military, like organizations. And what they found was, at the end of the day, there were a set of conditions, steps, and measures. I'm going to cover these real quick, that all effective teams have. Some of these may not look surprising, but some of these are often missed in taking that step into the team. The first are measures. How do you measure an effective team? Obviously, an effective team is meeting its goals, which often means, are you winning your campaign? You know, whatever kind of policy or change in the world you're trying to make, are you achieving that? These other 2 measures on capacity, are you actually growing the capacity of your team to work together? Any sports fans in the room? When we're cheering on the Bucks going down the stretch? Yeah. There's a reason there's a whole season and you have a playoffs and teams that make it to the end are able to, right? Because over time, game in and game out in those playoff games, they were learning how to more effectively work together, strategize as a team, and grow as a team. And then the last one is, are you creating opportunities for people to develop and grow in their own leadership as a result of their participation in the team? So those are the measures. The conditions, that it's bounded, not in an exclusive kind of way, but in an inclusive way. So you know who is in and who's not. Can anyone put on the 34 jersey of the Bucks and show up on game day?
No.
No. There's like clarity about who's in and who's not. It's stable. Anyone been a part of a team that every meeting the people in the room changes? And you're having to go back and like bring them up to speed, and it's like having like such a hard time actually grounding them and getting some momentum. Yeah, so there's stability around meeting times, how that's happening, and diversity. How important it is to draw on wide diversity of talents and skills. And then the last 3 are the steps. Having a clear purpose, having norms or agreements, and how, the point raised over there, and how people are making decisions together, how they're holding each other accountable, how they're running meetings. And the last one is, how are you meaningfully dividing up the roles and responsibilities of people on the team?
Okay, move it ahead. So when you're building a team, we kind of wanted to prep time, and how do our individual groups start out? How do we get together? And that's what goes into the recipe, which I think has been our next slide. The recipes for success. So everybody brings something a little bit different to the table. Beth, who we never really actually got to see, or intro yet, Beth, so if you wanna unmute in a minute here, and we're gonna let her start out. She's actually joining us from Eau Claire, and we've actually been able to use her as our role model for here in Madison for our group, just because our group, we met within another group, saw that we had similar interests, and like, how do we get started? And last year, I was introduced to Beth via the summit, and so we've been working together ever since to be able to use everything that they have already built as something that we can utilize together, because if you don't just start over from scratch, you really shouldn't have to if you see something that's ground in all the way. So Beth, if you wanna go ahead and do a nice intro, since we didn't get to snag you earlier, and start us through.
Awesome, sounds good. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So, hi everybody, greetings from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I wish I could be down there with you, but family calls and I couldn't get away. So we're gonna try this, and I apologize for my slide. I'm changing the slides and I can kind of hear, so if you need me, really yell. How's that? And how much time do I have? I can talk, so.
So we originally had about 10 minutes for each group, but we are about 20 minutes behind, so I think we're just trying to be comprehensive. So I would say try to aim for about 5 or 6 minutes if you can.
I can do that. So, as I said, my name is Beth. I'm up in Eau Claire, and I'm excited about this because I think leadership and thinking about starting groups is really important. And we all have to do it. We all come to, we're either asked to be in groups, or we have a passion to start a group, or we get into a group and we're like, oh, this is not working. How can we improve this? Well, our story with SEPTA started really a long time ago. My family story is I have 3 children, and my second child, which was perfectly planned, keep that in mind, turned out to be twins with twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome in utero. And I was on bed rest for 5 weeks, and they came out at 29 weeks. And that threw me into the world of special education and birth to 3 and therapies, surgeries, and cerebral palsy, anxiety, OCD, you name it. We've had it at our house, I'm pretty sure. So that really kept me busy when the kids were little. And I'm a mom and a wife, and I was a pharmacist before I had kids, and when we had our twins, there was just no way I could go back. Thankfully my husband has a good job. But I was able to do a lot of volunteering in the schools for the first few years the twins were in school. And then, I was trying to find other parents who had kids with special needs to talk to, and I didn't meet any through the school district, which is one thing that I want to just let teachers and parents really understand. I was there and I was having a hard time meeting. I was in the school at least once or twice a week. So I did meet some friends who had kids with special needs through either other friends or church. And there was a group of us that started a coffee group probably around 2013, 2014. It was after Act 10, and all of us had older kids who knew what schools were like pre-Act 10. And we were all starting to see the impacts of budget changes and schools, although I don't think any of us realized that. I don't think we knew how much that hit. That's another thing that I really think we need to talk about maybe at another point, but I think it's important because parents didn't know what was really happening and how it was impacting our kids. Anyhow, we started this group, and we would just get together about every month, and what we were looking for, it wasn't really support, it was like networking. Like, at the time, there were no summer programs for kids with special needs in the Eau Claire area, so it was a lot of, what have you found, what can we do, what else is going around, where can we get different therapies or reading programs, what happens during transition, who should I be talking to? All of these kind of questions were coming up in our little coffee group. And at one point, I think it was about 2015, we said, if our group of moms are feeling this, what are other parents doing? How are they figuring this stuff out? And from there, we started schools. There were a bunch on the East Coast that were really active and they were really helpful. We started talking with trying to find other parents to see what they would like. We were looking at groups that were already in our schools and going, can we just join these and would that help? Unfortunately, a lot of us had already been on the parent transition or parent groups or PTAs, and we're kind of like, that's not really what is needed for special education. So we thought, what, we really want to have a group that meets monthly in which we can learn about resources in our community, have some education. We did not want this to be a complaint fest. We did not want this to be where parents come and the schools, just gets bombarded with yelling. And we also we just really wanted some education on topics so that we could figure out how we can proceed or what to think about. And then from then we started talking with the school district, and I'm sure that the director of special education at that time, she knew all 5 of us, and I think we were those moms. We had advocated for our children, and I think she was probably thinking what we wanted to do would be a scream team. And it took us about 2 years to convince the school district with lots of back and forth, bringing in school board members. We actually had a meeting off campus that was not at the school to talk with other parents, with a school board member and our parent liaison, and to see if what we were thinking, other parents were thinking. And it took 2 years. We finally had our first meeting in May of 2017. And that was we filled a cafeteria at one of our middle schools. And it was really a well-attended meeting, and it was really just a great event. And then we told them what we wanted to do, and what we wanted to do the next year was have a meeting once a month. Our meetings are broken up into different parts. The first 10 minutes, we have kind of new business, old business. We have the parent liaison from the school district talk. We invite the head of special education to talk and give any updates. Then we do community connection time, where we bring in groups from around the community so that parents can hear about them and learn about their programming. And then we do an education piece, and that's really what we've been strong on, I think, is education. We've had physicians, we've had therapists, we've had mindfulness trainings, we've had the school district come in and do presentations on things. And that, I think, has been really helpful for our community. And then at the end, we always have a social time. So with Zoom this last year, we had to change things around a bit. We kind of dropped the community connection because nobody was connecting. And but we had some great education. We also dropped the number of times we Zoom meetings this last year because we just found the parents were really burnt out by the end. But one thing that I think really helped with having our group, and even I think our special education director would agree, is last spring when all the COVID stuff was coming, we said, listen, we've got to do a Zoom meeting, and you need to come on and tell what's happening in the school district. And she was like, well, I think parents are okay. It was kind of, but we talked and she came on, and you could just see the parents on the Zoom meeting. They didn't realize what was happening in the school district. And I had a lot of feedback afterward, like, I had no idea they were doing all that stuff. So I think our group has really been able to be a bridge of communication between the schools and parents. I'm probably running out of time, so I am just going to say one more thing. The pictures on here are from our resource fair, and we had that in March of 2020, like 2 weeks before COVID hit. And this we were hoping to do every year. We had over 40 vendors and over 120 people came, and it was just fantastic. We had people talking, and this is where we really wanted our group to go, is to really be able to help parents find resources that they need. The other thing we did last summer through COVID was an advocacy workshop. We had Wild come and do a presentation. We also had Chris Humbach-Boyle gave us a legislators to our meeting, and they heard all of our stories. So that was really, really good. One more thing, and then I'll get off. We have, our goal is to be the ears for our community. And ears means education, advocacy, be a resource, and be a support. And I'm turning over, I'm the past president now, and we have, my friend Kelly is gonna be the president this coming year, and I'm really excited about it, and hoping we can grow and get more people on our board. That, getting more people involved when you are talking with special ed parents who are exhausted, and it's not easy. So, but we have a strong group, and we're hoping to continue to grow. So, thank you.
So we're gonna move on. Now we're going to MTMDA, which is Madtown Moms and Disability Advocates. And that's where we come in. We literally model off of the stuff that Beth was just saying about. We've seen like what she struggled with, and we've seen what's worked. And those both components are really, really important. You can't draw off of all the good stuff that happened to people. You gotta know like what they went through or what you might run into as barriers, so you can actually see if they are actually very where you are, or if some way to circumvent that beforehand. And so we were able to do it with MTMDA, one by talking with Nikki, because Nikki's on our school board. And we're able to have like a lot of communication, more?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. We're able to connect with our school board members a lot in order to try to align with our districts more, and we've been able to create some really good relationships within our new administration, which was also another opportunity that we had, because if you're working with something and you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again and just trying to create a new conversation, nothing actually changes unless the other side starts listening and you actually see some action. But it also takes more than one person. So these are our core four that we have here today. We do have other members, but when it comes to special education supports, parents are exhausted. The special education is exhausting, and it's always important to know that the people that show up for it are representing a much larger subset of families across the district. So we're always really proud to be able to talk about what we do, but we know that we're representing more that are around us. So we are gonna start off with Mattie. Mattie, go ahead.
Hi, I am Mattie. Once again, I am the treasurer of Madtown Mommas. Can't hear me. So how I met these ladies, right? So I had a child who had a disability in school. And I'll talk a little.
Okay.
And I was just running into all type of difficulties trying to give him the special education help that he needed. And I'm called the barrier buster. No
Yeah.
always means yes to me. Okay, so
She's right.
I ended up joining a meeting with a group of ladies, and Martha was part of that meeting. And her and I stayed friends after that meeting, but she then started dabbling into me because the role that I play on social media, she's like, oh God, you would be awesome to become part of the group. And one lady had ended up leaving, and there was a spot for me. I kept saying, is she gone yet? Is she gone yet? When is she leaving? Are you sure she's leaving? But she ended up being totally interested in me because I had the connection to the community, and not just the community, the minority community who usually gets left out of things like this. So I dived right in, and I met these ladies, and we are like power busters, okay, for disabled children and even parents. And a lot of disabled children, a lot of their parents are disabled too, like myself in such a way, just a different disability. So, I just think that it's important. I think we need to bring awareness, and I think that it takes more than one. So yeah, the more the merrier. I pass it on.
Me? That's you.
Okay, hi. So I'm Margarita. I have a 15-year-old who is now a sophomore, and I have been situation that they're in. I have more than once wanted to hurt someone for my child. And it's very difficult and it's very lonely. And when you're by yourself, when Dan, you were talking about a leader and how you're by yourself, it's very difficult to manage that road of, okay, this is where I gotta go. And even if you're not part of a team, but you're your child's team, right? So you have to make the decisions, you have to know where to go, who to talk to and whatnot. And it's very lonely. And you know, Mattie said, when people tell me no, you gotta find a way. And you know, my son is one of those people who has invincible disabilities, so you can't see, right? He looks just fine. And people try, in the school district, want to have him grow out of it, right? They say, oh, we're gonna help him and he'll be better and he'll learn, and some things he can't grow out of, you know? And sometimes it's a more difficult path, because if you can't see it, people think you can't help them or they don't need any help. And so it makes it quite difficult. And you know, I am bilingual, I am Mexican, and I'm the kind of person that like claws and scratches. So I try to find where else can he go? Where else can I put him in? What groups? And you know, my son is also part of a group. I don't know if you're local or not, but it's called Padres y Hijos en Acción, Parents and Children in Action for children with disabilities on the Latino side. You know, and that group kind of helps children and parents go out together. Because, you know, we're talking about school, but home life as well can be very difficult. So this group kind of helps the families and the children go out together, whether it's to gardening or bicycling or finding resources and having seminars, educational, you know, information that they can learn as well. But yeah, I am the vice president of Madtown Mommas, and you know, you have to find a common ground, and we all love our children and want the best for them, and I'm very proud to be part of this group.
All right, so I'm Anna, and I am the secretary for Madtown Mommas. I have 3 kids, they're all in this room. We have one sitting up here and 2 are sitting in the back. And I mean, if you're sitting in the room, which not everybody is, my child who's sitting up by me has cerebral palsy, he's sitting in a wheelchair. You can tell he's disabled. My other 2 children don't look disabled, so a lot of times, like Maggie was talking about, we've had challenges because people just assume that either they're not disabled, or we've had troubles where school tried to teach the disability out of our children, and that's been a really big challenge for us. Like, I mean, that's not, it's really frustrating. I mean, it's hard enough when you're trying to, you know, like get the needs met of somebody who's like, okay, we need to have this accessibility for this person who needs to get their wheelchair in this place, and this building is 100 years old, right? I mean, those are hard enough battles to fight, but then when you are quite literally told that your child, you know, they should just figure it out, and you're tired. And as a parent, that's where you're at. Like up until about 2 years ago, I didn't join parent groups. I didn't want to be a part of parent groups. It's not because I didn't want to do things. When Zabe was 1 year old, I was a part of a group that was about learning how to advocate for your child. And it took until about, actually I think it was 3 years ago now. That's so weird. But when we were part of a larger group that did some teaching around people who wanted to learn how to do advocacy at the legislative level. And I really wanted to do stuff. Like, that's who I am as a parent, that's who I am as a person. I never wanted to sit around and complain. So that's why, like, I know Beth was talking about that, but like, I didn't want to be a part of people who were just sitting around complaining about how hard it was. Because it was hard, but I wanted to do more with it. I wanted to do stuff, because like from the second he was born, I was like, from the second my first child was born, which is Xavier here, I was like, okay, how can, you say he can't do this stuff, but how can we make it so that he can interact with this world? Because I'm not going to buy the fact that just because he's in a wheelchair and he can't talk, that he's not doing stuff. Like, we're not doing that. That's not the life we're living. And so I just decided, like, that's not how we're doing it. But eventually I met these ladies, and it was a while. I lived from 2 miles from Maggie for like 2 years. So I mean, I didn't know her in my community. And like Beth also said, I didn't know other moms at school. And we've all been active moms who are involved in participating in our children's schools, making sure that we're, you know, getting active out in the community. And we didn't know any other parents, and it is really lonely. And so we found this group of people who wanted to do stuff. And so we took that and we were like, gosh, we all see these inequities. What could we do with that? How could we fix it? Now we've got these tools, we've got these pieces. Like we know how to talk to our legislators, because we went to this, you know, this training, and we know what we want to do. And it started what do we do with that? Like, okay, so we're gonna call ourselves a board, because that's exactly what a board is four people who are, functioning as this core, who are making change in an organization. And we end up starting a nonprofit together, and part of that is we're doing a local PTA, but it does other things in our community. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm gonna toss it over to Martha to give a little bit of her story, and then we're gonna kind of move on a little bit.
Awesome. So I'm the president of Madtown Mommas, and just everything that Anna is just related to brings in everything that a parent brings with them to the table. And then, but you have all that going on, but when you actually get to be part of a group, you get to spread out the responsibilities to everybody, because you find your strengths when you come together and you actually start talking about, what can I bring to the group? What do I have? What do we need to do? What are our goals? My daughter, who is 9 years old, we've been button heads a little bit with school districts at different times since 2015. But since then, the more you work at something, the more you reach out to different resources that are around you, and some of these aren't even local, they're across the state. So we have facets, it's out of Milwaukee, but you can give them a phone call and they can tell you exactly what you can do within an IEP. We actually, as a group, because we are more local, we actually reach out to parents and other groups around us. So we actually go to other parents' IEPs if they would like us to, and actually be at the table with them. Just because there's so much going on, because we've been through it before, so even if one of us doesn't know exactly what's going on, we have the resources to move further, to help them out in whatever means possible that we're able to. But then again, we have members we can go to, we need this, we need to do this for them. So it really separates it out and doesn't become all one person at the same time. And we met, the group that Anna was talking about was a board for people with developmental disabilities. That was back in 2019.
Partners in Policymaking is.
Partners in Policymaking, right.
And they are
right.
recruiting people currently to take that.
That's done annually, so they're always looking for people, and it's an amazing experience to kind of see where the world of education and disability and everything, how did it come together? Was it a movement, and what are civil rights, in that specific area, and where can we go from here, and what can you do to move on? So that's where our group really came together and said, we all know now what tools we have at our disposal. How do we go out and actually be the people that make change in our community? And one of them, when Maggie and I have gone on one of Dan's wild programs for leaderships, because they partnered with WPEN one year, and so we were able to kind of dabble, take things away from there, and again, bring them over to the group. So whenever I'm doing stuff with Jasmine, our stuff is still not perfect. We will still run into things, but it's about the individualized need of your students. Individualized. I don't think that's done effectively enough to give that to every student yet. We are getting there, but we need more parents coming together to say it as a group, and to have a school board, really make, hold up on those policies that we have of everybody is not the same. We can't blanket stuff over the students. We have to stay for an individualized programming. So, go ahead.
Actually, besides being on the school board, I'm also an attorney. And if you read the latest case, Endow versus Colorado, which went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, it specifically says an IEP is an individualized document, and it specifically spells it out. So if everyone's like, well, in your team is saying, well, this is how everyone must do it, so we have to do it this way, the key thing is you have to cite that no, the law states it must be an individualized program, and that is what the current law is, and that isn't up for debate. Just a tip.
Can I
Your
ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I have heard this story many times. I don't have, kids with disability, but I have many, friends that do. And then I also agree that actually every child in the school should have an IDE. Not just, a group, or just because you think like, you say, well, you don't see it, so.
Right.
Anyway, but how So being a school board member, I'm trying, along with others, to essentially create a group of parents that advocate and that teach others, because it's a world that is so complicated to navigate. You know? And then for people that speak the language, it's even worse. So I'm trying to do that, but as a school board member, it's kind of hard sometimes to do it from inside, so it has to be other people that come, and all of us that want to do that, the four of us are board members. So how did you come to the school and propose, we want to do this, and we want to be, and what are the barriers, or what can people do?
I would say that I've seen a couple different ways to to be effective. Is one, the more parents you get to show up and actually just say stuff, and to say it often. So you're not just a one-time show, is really important, because in Madison, I used to show up constantly, and Maggie used to go there constantly, and then Anna's been there a few times too. You show up and you start telling your story, but you can also stick to your story, but you can kind of build it out as you need to, or say, this hasn't been fixed yet, I was here before. But
Right.
also,
When we wanted to do this though, like
Yeah.
when we started out and we wanted to get this going, we went to the director of student services and special education, and we said, we've got this group, this is what we wanna do, this is what it's based off of. Like, we sat down and had a meeting with him, so we said, can we do this at the school? Like, we went and asked for permission. So we kind of did something that we can chat about a little bit when we break out a little bit, is we did something like power mapping. We said, who's important? Like, who makes decisions, and who do we ask the questions to, right? So you're not just like, oh, like, let's like figure, like, we were like, okay, we need to start to get to know our school board, we need to start to get to know our admin. Those are the people who are gonna make the decisions on whether or not we're allowed to.
and the we is very important, because it wasn't just a single one of us anymore, it was like two or more. You know, as long as you have someone else coming in with you, you're no longer a single voice.
But you have are you an entity that goes, like a nonprofit that goes and say, hey, we want to do this, and what are the legal barriers or whatever
So we
needs to
started
be
as
done?
just a group, and then we worked on our nonprofit status as we were going.
Yeah, so
But I
we
mean-
started helping each other at first. Like, I can say from my experience, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I didn't know that I could go to the school board and talk and say, I'm having troubles with this, I'm having difficulty with that. I didn't know that I could do that. I was struggling, I'm a single parent, and I was struggling. I was like, I was drowning, right? So in my mind, I didn't know until I met these ladies at, Partners in Policy Making, where they said, you do have a voice. Your child has a voice. You can go to the Capitol and say, hey, I'm here, and so is my kid, and this is what we need. We need funding. So that's when we kind of started to help each other. Martha's more like, she's got like the head on her shoulders, she's more technical in what she says. I'm like the demander, the yeller, the swearer, the crier, I'm the emotional one. Anna's more of, she's got more experience because she's got 3 children and 3 different realms, the high school, the middle school, and the elementary, and she has, she's got the technical person, and so we kind of, wrap, and Mattie here.
You got me messed up.
No. Period. And, so we also joined we were doing the Wisconsin Partners in Policy Making. Is that fun, Z?
I would agree that.
He's like, that's right.
That's
And
what
we
she
started
went
helping each other, and then from helping each other, we were like, okay, well, we can do more. There's more people out there.
But we did, after a while, we did hone in on certain administrators.
Right.
And start going to them as a team. Because then, again, you're not a single parent asking for your single child, doing it like that. You become more than that, and they realize that you have more resonating with families, but we've also come to the table with that, because, I don't know if Anna, you wanted to speak on that really quick, because when we approached our district, something Beth had talked about was, I know it was somewhere in there, that we talked, they had a parent liaison,
Oh, sure,
which
yeah.
a lot of districts are missing.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens in our district, and I don't know if that's universal, but like, we have this, there's no statute, like, I've got a challenge within my IEP, there's an issue going on, right? And now I'm talking to admin, like, there's no in between. There's nobody to like tell you what your rights are, or like, and you can maybe like dig out an advocate somewhere, like, but it's really challenging to like get in touch with those people, or to get somebody to take on your thing. Like, you can go to Disability Rights Wisconsin if you need to escalate something, but whether or not briefly, this person is this liaison, and they're the person that kind of is in between. So like, they have this person who functions in that role, and they can use them as a resource. So it doesn't have to escalate.
It's for educators and parents, though, that's the important
It
part.
becomes a teamwork thing, right? It becomes a process where we're working together as opposed to a process where we're against each other. Because we're always better as a team, and it's reframing that situation. And that's kind of one of our goals is as a PTA, and I think that that's one of the things that the SEPTA does too, is really try to make sure that we're working with admin and teachers and families and professionals and all of those people, everybody is actually working together and it gets to know each other's like if you are, maybe you're a physical therapist and you're going through your stuff, and if you can listen to like what life is like for somebody, and like they can also listen to you, like you guys can work together and build together, and that's kind of the idea, is building a larger team, because like we were talking again, I think in a couple of, like in the keynote, where it's like when we work together as a group, we can do more. So if we're all working together, if you've got parents who are feeling connected and they feel like they can engage with school because they feel supported as opposed to feeling like they're constantly battling somebody, if you're feeling like you're working as a team, then you end up in a situation where you guys can work together and you do things like we as a team, we're gonna hold our school team accountable, right? Like that's our role as parents. We're gonna say like this is our AP, but then we're also gonna come on the other end of it and say we support public education funding because we know that our teachers and our admin, our professionals, they all work really hard, and we want to make sure that we're doing it on both ends of it. So, but we're connected to it because we've connected to people within that group, and so it breaks down those barriers of when we talk with the school board members, like for us, or even legislators, it breaks down that thing of thinking of this person who's up here. It makes that person feel like somebody you can just chat with. Like you can say, I really have a problem. Like I'm, and makes somebody not on a pedestal, and it breaks down that piece, because I think that's where a lot of people get hung up, is they're like, gosh, I'm scared to talk to an administrator, or scared to talk to this school board member, or scared to talk to this senator, right, Dave? But it makes it so that you can actually just walk in and say, this is the relationship we're supposed to have. We're supposed to work together. We're supposed to do that thing. And we're trying to work past, lots of trauma on both sides of things, but that's what we're all trying to do, is work to build a team.
And holding them, holding their positions accountable. So like I heard you, accountability. Like with DPI, you would think that DPI would be a source for you to go and pour your problems or your issues out to get them resolved. But yet, in my situation, it was where my son's disability led him to the pipeline of prison. And I went to DPI and I tried to say, hey, these are the issues that I'm having, but yet they weren't the mediator that I was looking for, because they did not hold the school board accountable. So I think working together, but making sure accountability is being forced is very, very important. And you can't really come by yourself, because me coming as an African American woman, uneducated, not only about being an advocate for my son who has a disability, but the law as well. So, you gotta find the right representation, and in Madison, that's pretty hard, because no one wants to go up against the school board, besides Madtown Mommas, But we also want to have that relationship with the school board where we're not the ones that's always just picking. We want to find solutions.
Yeah, I think everybody should be interested, the school should be also interested in this, because it should be a partnership, and it will make it easy for everyone.
And when you're talking about where do you go to, well, then you'd have a role of someone who actually knows all the technical sides. Who can I bring to the table? What are my resources? What can we use for professional development? What kind of policies can we make in order to make everybody work together better? So that type of role has an opportunity to have that be a focus. Otherwise, if someone who's trying to take care of all the other administrative roles tries to do that, it tends to get lost. You don't have that place that everybody can go to in order to make that bond, that relationship happen.
And we do have a Facebook page too, so if you need to reach out, or if you have any other questions, please feel
All of
free.
our contact info is definitely on the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're gonna hear just a few and then we're just gonna have a few more chatting, and then we'll wrap it up for the day.
Sounds good. Bringing home the home stretch here. Yeah, if you want to find out about WILD, maybe the quickest is just to check us out online. It's wildproj.org for upcoming trainings. Hoping to get back in person this fall. Maybe just to bring some of a few of the elements that we introduced on the front end, kind of full circle. Anyone inspired by the work of Madtown Mommas and SEPTA and where they came from to pull their teams together? SEPTA? Sorry.
I'm inspired by SEPTA. Thank you.
We got one in the back. Everybody get one of these handouts? Yeah, you can go to this page with the conditions, steps, and measures. Conditions, steps, and measures. Since we're in a school, I'm going to throw a quick pop quiz. You got a lot of good examples here between these two examples. Starting with the conditions. Curious, people are paying attention now. On the first one, unbounded. Anything coming to mind? Maybe even thinking about Madtown Mommas. Is it clear who's in and who's out in, like, again, in an inclusive way versus exclusive? Who's their team?
Them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the four of them, right? And they're actually all interesting. Not unlike a lot of effective teams, they even have their own, like, T-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
There's a way to identify them. What else did they do? They actually went out and formed a nonprofit organization that formally founded them. How about stable? Thinking about Beth's example, SEPTA in Eau Claire. Anything that you heard in Beth's story?
They were consistently meeting
Yeah, consistently meeting. Beth, how often are y'all meeting?
once a month.
Through the school district, through
Yeah.
the schools.
Or you all, yeah.
Yeah.
You're meeting,
We meet the second Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock.
super clear, right?
Or hopefully in person someday soon.
Every Tuesday, 7 p.m., like month to month. It's not a question of when we're getting together. So it's bounded. Thinking of Mattie's role, I love the description as the power busters. What did Mattie describe as one of her, the point of diversity? What was one thing that she, when she was recruited, the team brought that maybe others didn't have as much of?
The voice of minority.
Yeah,
I don't like to call it minority, but.
the actual connection to the community is what Mattie shared, right? And knowing each of these women, like the various diverse set of skills, experiences far beyond race, right, that they bring to this team. And I'm sure it's the case with Beth and SEPTA. On steps, what was it was a year? Do you remember what those, she talked about the overall purpose? That the purpose of SEPTA was EARS. What'd you say? It was, yeah, go ahead.
It's education,
Yep.
advocacy, be a resource, and be a support.
So some broad overarching purposes. Love that y'all have monthly agendas. It sounds like with a lot of clarity around time and how you're going to spend it. And any roles that you thought were interesting? I mean, there's some standard ones like president and any other, which is a part of effective team. How you actually draw on the unique resources and skills of your team to help you get to your purpose. Any roles that were named that you thought were interesting, fun, different?
Social media.
Social media. I loved Margarita's. Remember she said part of her role is the demander, right?
I know that you say you love margaritas.
And I love margaritas. I love Margarita and margaritas. But yeah, I mean that's a skill and a role that actually make a lot of people uncomfortable, right? Actually being the one that can make the demands. Goals, the capacity. I love that. SEPTA, an example Beth you shared, and it sounds like happens with Madtown Mommas. Like the team is going through training, and investing in like learning how to work together. But there's also all these opportunities. Are you saying monthly? Like you have people come through who are constantly educating your people, Beth?
Yeah, we have a different educational theme every month. So we've had a physician talk about ADHD, another one came in and talked about anxiety. We've had, I think she was a speech therapist, talk about zones of regulation for our kids and train anybody who wanted to come. So every month there
back to,
We brought that over as well.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do that as well for our group too.
Cause it was such a good,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great model. It's really
Yeah.
helpful because we know that every month we need a topic and that gives you purpose and focus.
so back to the keynote today with Karan, right? And this question of how do all of us, start to figure out how to bridge the gap between what overwhelmingly is like support, it seems, right, for public education, and on the flip side, like the lack of meaningful policies that are addressing that coming through, like how important it is for us to be educating and bringing not just our initial core team, right, certainly that crew, but so many other people in the process. What's the reality of power in the state of Wisconsin, how it plays out, how it doesn't, and how we find ways to win.
So I chose this session as an educator. I actually teach students in alternative settings, specifically juvenile justice centers, in which there's this line kind of intentionally made between the community and the students during the time that they are under the care of this secure facility, whereas I'm just a guest coming in to teach them. And I was hoping to sort of be guided as to how to create a group that advocates for even children who aren't even directly mine, and how do I get a voice for parents in a situation where there's traditionally no parent involvement and things of that nature. So I guess I'm wondering, just for me to take something away, would that be something that you would recommend as a teacher, that I would like maybe reach out to Madtown
Mammals.
Madtown
Yes,
Mommas?
reach out to us.
Is it something I would reach out to Madtown Mommas and say, hey, I'm noticing there's not enough advocacy for my students, but I'm a teacher, I don't know that, there's a fine line of how much I can do. Why don't I see parents, why don't I get to call parents?
the amount of time that we've spent, working together brings in all the networking opportunities we've been part of in the past.
But yeah.
So if you bring something to the table, I'm like, this is what I've got. If we don't do, like, dabble it directly, we know so many people, and I'm already thinking of like two things in my mind that are like in Wisconsin. So in case you're not in Madison, that we can direct you to someone who says, hey, this is your go-to there. So, yes, and it is, we welcome any questions brought to the table, because we've spent the time to get to know statewide resources. And so, even if you're not from our area, we could definitely direct you in a good direction to achieve that goal, yeah.
And like navigating, like, what is legal, what isn't? Is it really a legality?
Yeah.
Can I call a parent? Should I not? Those types of things.
Yeah. And there's resources that literally are there just to hear those questions. So yeah, we can talk, we can talk afterwards, but yeah, that's a great thing to bring up, yeah. Yeah. Anna, are we at our very end?
We are officially at the end, so if people have to head up, it's absolutely fine. If anybody else has any questions or wants to chat for a minute, we're still here for a minute.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I did want to bring one other thing up. We are also actually part of a federal movement called Fulfill the Promise. So by the cafeteria, right under where it says Performing Arts Center, there is a table. It's actually the first table right under there, the table to the left, and it's called Fulfill the Promise. And there's airplanes there, and it explains everything about, trying to send a whole bunch of paper airplanes. I don't think anybody has really paid attention to that table, and that's very sad.
I got
You did?
Yeah, so the paper airplanes are actually, we have a table here, and paper airplanes are actually sending the hopes and dreams of Wisconsinites for education, and they're being sent to the United States Secretary of Education, Miguel Morona, because we want to send a tangible, kind of fun, playful, but tangible thing, because the initiative itself is calling on the federal government to fulfill the promise of IDEA, which in 1975, they said they were going to fund it at 40%. That has literally never happened. And so there was a petition for it, and actually there is some legislation that's being built around it, and we're calling on it to be a little bit better. There is a law that's I can't think of what it's called right now. I can't think of the name of it, but there's a law coming up, and they're looking at Van Hollen bill. There we go. So see, there's a bill coming up called the Van Hollen bill, named after the guy who sponsored it. And actually, I believe that Tammy Baldwin, one of our representatives, is signed on as a co-supporter. But the need some specific funding for 504 plans, because we are the last in place for the state of Wisconsin. 0.7% of our state is 504, has 504 plan utilization, and that's because they're not protected, and at the end of the day, IEPs, like, they're the rule, right? I mean, they're the ones that like demand the money, and when there's no money left, it's, you end up having to make hard choices and deny services when you don't necessarily want to, but there's no protected status, and so what do? Like, you have to do the best with what you've got. We're all doing our best. So that's what we're pointing out to people, to fill out those paper airplanes. If anybody is interested in getting one of those who is on the Zoom, you can send an email to Madtown Mommas, and we will absolutely send you a copy of that digitally. And if anybody else is interested in getting more for like their group or anything like that, we can also do that as well. But that's another example of, like, we don't just do a PTA. We're getting involved in other things. We get brought in, like, by creating a group, or by working together with the teachers union, we met, then the teachers union got involved with the other teachers union. By networking with people, that's absolutely essential. You get to have those conversations with people. You're doing the power mapping. We knew that in our community, MTI makes waves. Like, in our community, there are people who make some things happen. And so we said, let's get to know these people, and that is how we ended up in this other situation. And so now we're making changes on a federal level. We're not just looking at the state of Wisconsin, where we're seeing, people dragging their heels. We're saying, okay, but the federal government has to do their part too, right? So, like, it kind of, that's where we have this thing on there that talks about dream team checklist and talks about being flexible. And, like, you have this idea of what you're gonna be and what you're gonna do, and you wanna have your framework and not let it be all willy-nilly, but we have a goal to work within special education and disability in our community and to improve that. And that falls within something that we took on, like, as our group. And so it kind of naturally cascades. I think that when you start doing those pieces, you start making those pieces together, and as you start going, it just kind of rolls. It's kind of, it's like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it picks up more people and it gains momentum.
And you guys are here, so like it brought everybody to, into a similar space. So that's exactly why we're here. We would love to hear back from anybody who wanted to contact us for any reason whatsoever, even if it's just to get connected to, someone else in your community. Yeah.
So we're officially at 3:51. I want to thank all of our
And I
people
want to
for
connect with,
coming
well,
in.
all of you. I think